Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the JKL Media Podcast. This is another one of our one-off specials. This time we're going to talk about the Canadian metal progressive rock band Rush. And I'm very curious to hear Karen and Jesse's reactions to this band, a Canadian band that never achieved the recognition of other higher profile musicians that we've talked about before. I think for many of you listeners out there, this is probably going to be a band that you're probably going to know, who are they? And I'm very curious to hear about Jesse and Karen's reactions. But before I get into that, I'm going to ask a question to both of you. And I'll start with you, Karen. And you can be a yes or no. Geddy Lee's voice, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Jesse,
No.
no. And that is quite a common reaction to a lot of people from Rush. I know my brother, for instance, can't stand his voice, and because of that, won't listen to their music, period. It is definitely an acquired taste, but within the context of the band, I think his voice occupies a space that is not covered by anything else the band does, and it works quite well against that. But we can get into that a bit more. Rush is I think you would call them a musician's band. They're very well respected for their technical prowess with instruments and whatnot, but they're they're probably the one of the nerdiest bands that you'll ever run across. And what's amazing about them is the amount of music that they produced between the three of them as a power trio. You could easily mistake them for double the size, the amount of people that are playing. You have got Geddy Lee, plays bass, keyboards, and lead vocals. Alex Lifeson, who plays lead guitar, and Neil Peart, who played drums and percussions. And each of these guys are considered the top musicians in their field, and they wrote songs that their type of music, like if you listen to Pink Floyd, is not the kind of music you would play at a party or that you would just put on. You could put it on as background music, but it's not really meant to be listened that way. It's a type of music that you would listen to by yourself with a pair of headphones and what other accoutrements that you might want to partake of while you're listening to that music. And I think Rush is in that same vein as well. They're between them and the Tragically Hip. They're probably the two biggest bands popularity-wise in Canada, at least, and the world probably as well. And in some odd ways, they share a very similar trajectory in terms of what happened during their life journeys. So, and we'll get into that in a bit when we start talking about the documentary. But I did send a list of songs for you to listen to get you introduced to them. And before I ask you if you had a favorite track out of them or what you thought of them, it's always, I think, out of all the art forms, it's really hard to discuss music with people if they've never heard of the group or they never grew up with the group because you don't have that emotional connection that, like, I truly believe that our strongest musical connections happen during our teen and early 20 years, like when we're out socializing and partying or studying or whatever. Because then after that, once you get settled down and married, then you just don't have the time to invest in listening into the groups the same way, or they don't impact you the same way generally as they do when you're at that perfect incubation age, I think. Jesse, as someone who doesn't like Getty's voice, did you like any of the songs that I asked you to listen to?
Yeah, a couple. I would argue that I think you're selling your band short. I think a lot of people know who Rush is,
Okay.
and I think they are getting the right amount of due their way. They are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They have
Took a long
sold,
time.
huh?
Yeah,
Took them
took
a
a
long
long
time,
time.
though.
But that happens to a lot of bands. It took
Hmm.
Cyndi Lauper a long time. It that is a common thought among people that are passionate about a band should be done faster. And I get that to this day, and I laugh, but John Denver is not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame or the Country Music Hall of Fame because he's just uncool. But you forget how big he was in the 70s and how much music he sold. And how big part of the culture. But anyway, that said, I love I love the band. Watching that documentary made me want to love these guys immensely.
Hmm.
That is not the kind of music I enjoy. Maybe it's because I've never indulged in mind-altering substances, and I don't know what else. But yeah, I don't enjoy Pink Floyd's music. I'm not
Oh,
a
really?
Metallica.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't like Metallica. I don't like any heavy metal band. So this was a tough sledding for me. And yeah, so I enjoyed it, and I especially listened to it with an open heart because God knows I've made you guys listen to way too much Bruce Springsteen music. But yeah, I loved the documentary and I liked some of the songs.
Okay. Any in particular, or
The radio one I thought was pretty
Mm-hmm.
good.
Spirit of
Yeah,
Radio, yeah.
I thought I read the lyrics and liked as poetry some of the others, but the songs don't sound different to me. They
yeah,
all kind of sound the same. So it's hard for me to, versus like for my impression, Bruce songs are very different.
yeah.
You
And
know,
that I think that's a sign of a fandom because we had
yeah,
that conversation when we talked last week where I feel like a lot of Bruce's songs sound very similarly
exactly.
in
Yeah.
his later career, especially.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's why I really didn't want to. Okay, and I'm joking. Loose shit on Bruce. Now I'm ready to shit on because I adored the Tragically Hip. When you got that, I thought this is a band that is underappreciated outside of Canada.
Hmm.
And I was amazed. This one, I'm like, yeah, I think, and obviously Rush is playing 3 nights here in Fort Worth, and I talked about it. I almost went just to say, "Hey, I went," but the cheapest ticket was 350. It's sold out, and it's all on the aftermarket. That was the
Mm.
cheapest ticket, and that's in a nosebleed section. So obviously, they're kicking ass and taking names, and you gotta love that a band has been that long and that many versions. I
50
really did.
years. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I
Yep.
really did want a later version of the documentary because this documentary was made multiple years ago,
Yeah.
and I would have liked to see part 2 of what happened since then.
Yeah, that's the one of the big takeaways from the documentary that I have too, is that it really needs a chapter two because there's a
Yeah.
lot of stuff that happens after
Yeah, the
this
documentary
one.
was
And
amazing.
good.
I liked it a lot.
Okay. Cool. Karen, do you have any favorite songs out of the list that I gave you or
I love Spirit of Radio, right?
hmm
That's a
Yeah,
great song. But I think my favorite out of the list you gave me is Tom Sawyer. And that
right.
is just, that hits every button for me. It was also in an episode of Chuck, I thought that was great too. It's the one that I most associate with Rush.
Yeah.
So I think I have a fondness for it, but they they were all good. Subdivisions, I like that too. And the words mean a lot,
Hmm.
because I grew up in that kind of neighborhood too.
Yeah.
The Spirit of Radio, the video was just fantastic. I'm sure we'll talk about that, but yeah, they were great. And I will say, I'm a little bit younger than you. By the way, the band is 58 years old, and I know that because they formed the same year I was born,
Wow.
1968.
Yeah.
So I've mentioned to Lou, this is my husband's favorite band.
Which caught me
Um,
off guard, but
yeah,
that's pretty cool.
I hear him listening to it quite a lot. He loves Boston. He loves most of the bands that you mentioned you didn't like, Jesse.
Yeah, Pink Floyd, Metallica.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very much. And Queen is on both of our top
Yeah.
2 or 3 list, right? But I also love REO Speedwagon, and I think he has a similar feel to his voice, the lead singer, not for everyone. And I think it's the same with Geddy Lee. If I hadn't heard so much of the band, I don't know that I'd be so fond of his voice, but I think it does really go with their sound. So there's that. And I do want to mention, and I've said this before, and it's not to rub it in, but I'm a little bit younger than you guys. And they were a huge part of my formidable years in the 80s. They had a big resurgence of of popularity in the 80s. And even here in the States, that people were buying their records hand over fist. At least,
That's very surprising to me. But
okay.
they do mention in the documentary that Moving Pictures was their breakout album and would have been in the 80s. So that's perhaps why what you're saying has
Yeah,
happened. But I think
people were
before that,
drawing their logo on their backpacks and stuff. It
yeah,
was a big deal.
yeah. Alrighty. So let's get into the documentary then. And this came out in 2010. And so it covers up to the period when they got back together and their last album was Clockwork Angels 2012, which they were touring with. They hadn't released it yet at the time of the documentary. What impresses me about this documentary is just how many celebrity musicians point to Rush as their inspiration or recognition of their talent. You've got Sebastian Bach from Skid Row, Jack Black, Tenacious D. Who else? There's a lot here. Billy Corgan, Smashing Pumpkins, Kirk Hammett from Metallica, Taylor Hawkins from Foo Fighters, Kim Mitchell, Max Webster, which is another Canadian group that I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with, but their biggest song was Patio Lanterns. Mike Portnoy, Dream Theater, Trent Reznor, Nine Inch Nails, Gene Simmons from Kiss. That connection just blows me away all the time.
Same.
Yeah, there's a fair bit of celebrities on this documentary, and I'm not going to go through every section of this episode or this documentary because there's 13 of them or more. But I'll start with you, Karen. What was your impressions of this documentary, and did it change your perception of the group in any way?
Yeah, this was something that was missing from my knowledge of Rush is their backstory. And I actually watched the documentary twice
Mm.
because it's been like 2 weeks since we decided to do this. And it's that good. I got a lot of, when you say they're the nerdiest band, I didn't know that until I watched this documentary because to
Mm.
me, they don't seem nerdy. I mean,
Oh, okay.
as far as their music goes, but I loved seeing there's little snippets of stuff that make you go, oh, that's awesome. When they were on tour with other bands and the other bands had like girls in their room and stuff, and they just went in their room and read or watched TV or whatever. I thought that was cute. Them talking about how much Neil read, and so that tied into him writing lyrics.
Mm.
That I read a lot. I can't write lyrics. So
Hmm.
it was quite an extrapolation. They were just like, we don't want to do it. You do it. So yeah, it was very cool to watch things. And also, Alex is the star of this documentary, as
Oh,
far as I'm
really?
concerned.
And why is
Yes.
that?
He is so funny. One of the parts of the documentary I love is when Getty and Alex are sitting in a diner
Yeah.
and the waitress comes over and asks for Getty Lee's autograph like 3 times.
Yeah.
She asked for it. Oh, this one's to this person and this one's to this person. And Alex is sitting there the whole time going, yeah, that's pretty funny. You can see him
Yeah.
laughing. And Getty says, he's the leader of our band. Don't you want his autograph? And she says, nope, and walks away. And Alex is just dying,
Yeah.
not dying in a bad way, dying laughing because
Yeah.
he knows that he's the invisible guy in the band, right?
Yes, probably he's the most underappreciated, I think.
I agree. And
Yeah.
very talented.
Yeah.
His guitar playing is fantastic. But I do think that whenever he was there, I thought, this is a genuine dude. And he understands that Getty and Neil were the recognizable part of Rush, but he
Hmm.
was just happy to be there. And I
Hmm.
really love that about him. So, yeah, I thought the whole documentary was great. Also, the guests that were on talking about how Rush influenced them, that was fantastic. Jack Black made me laugh every time he was talking. He went, I
Yeah.
love Jack Black. Tenacious D is definitely a nerdy type of music. And you can see their influence on Jack and Tenacious D. They were great. Seeing, what's his name? Taylor was sad as well because he passed away
Yep.
pretty recently. And then having Neil be such a big part of this and seeing how tragic parts of his life were and how shy he was and that was it's very insightful to me. All the stuff I
Hmm.
learned about them personally was great.
Cool. Jesse.
So, as I said, I really loved the band and found all three of the guys just incredibly charming and likable. I could see why people are fans of them. I wonder, as always, I'm going to bring this back to Bruce, right? But Bruce says that rock and roll music is the only place where you can stay friends in business with your childhood friends. Him and little Steven met each other in high school and they're still friends.
Right.
Here are these guys that became friends and started a band in high school, and they're now in their 60s or 70s, and they're still
70s.
making music
Yeah.
together,
Yeah.
right? And
Mhm.
you think about Paul Simon and Art Garfunkel, right? Paul Simon can't stand Art Garfunkel, and these guys seem to still like each other. And I'm sure
Mhm.
they've had their arguments and fights over the years because friends do that, but I
Yeah.
love that idea. I love that it seems like they still have the same manager, the guys
Mm-hmm.
hanging out for him, and how they took care of Neil when he was going through all that, and the idea of, okay, we're just going to wait.
Yeah.
And this seems like you want these people to succeed. You
Mm-hmm.
want them to do well. And it's funny now to see them, right? Is it Alex, the guitar player? But he's now got short hairs and looks like an accountant versus when he was playing with the long hair.
Yeah.
And I also think it's interesting the story about them adding in the synths and
Yeah.
the keyboards. Yet they didn't bring a keyboardist in. They
Mm.
just and when I'm a big fan of keyboards, as I would think you would have someone, but no, they work that. So, yeah, really enjoyed the documentary. They seem to, I just wish nothing but success for these guys. They are amazing. I was like, I'd be pulling for them if they were an up and coming band. And so I am thrilled that they are selling out arenas in 2026 and having a time of their life. And I think it's cool they replaced their drummer with a female. And I wanted to hear her story. I wanted a documentary on how they found her and how that worked. So,
She's German.
yeah,
I know that much.
yeah, it's just and the reason I laughed is because Jason Isbell fired his longtime bass player and replaced it with a female bass player that's really rocking it. So,
Awesome.
yeah, as I said, I won't want to spend time with Rush music, but I would get in a car ride with all three of these guys and would have a hell of a good time doing a road trip.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, for me, there's a much more personal connection just because I grew up in that area where they came from. So when I see a lot of these shots of streets and highways and cities, I've been on all those streets. I've been on those highways. I'm like on Yonge Street, which is the main street in Toronto. And it's the longest road in the world, I think, because it goes from Toronto all the way up to North Bay. But there's Sam, the records man. You see that big record, neon
Hmm.
lights? That was like a mecca for us all to go to because that record store was humongous. It had two sections to it and was like four floors on one piece, and the other part was two floors. And during the 70s and 80s, that was the place to get all the records that you really wanted to buy. And that was pretty amazing. And shots from their videos, like in subdivisions, like when they show that shot of the highway with the train going over the subway going over the bridge, that's a Don Valley Parkway that takes you to downtown Toronto. I've been on that highway millions of times. So I have a very vested emotional connection to the documentary and to the group. And It's interesting to like Karen, you mentioned I love that restaurant sequence when the lady was just wanted Getty's picture and autograph and all that stuff. And they talk about Pert not being sociable as Alex and Getty were. And did they cover it in the they didn't cover it too much in the documentary, but they also went to high school with Rick Moranis, and they fell out of contact until one day he was at an award show and Rick Moranis was there and Getty was going to go up on the stage and they reconnected and Rick said, "Do you need any jokes?" And Getty says, "Jokes? I don't need any jokes." I thought that was funny. And then later on they invited him to do a guest stint on the Bob and Doug McKenzie, the Hosers.
Dude, I was going to
Yeah,
bring this up.
the Great White North, which
Yep.
became Getty's biggest hit.
Highest rating record. Yeah.
Which was fun, which he did as a lark. So take off to the Great White North.
Take off. It's the only way to
It's the
go.
beauty way to go.
Beauty.
Beauty way to go. So yeah, there's just a lot of emotions for me with this. And then it in a weirdly parallel storyline with Neil Peart. He went through in the documentary covers this tragedy of he lost his daughter in a traffic accident, and then his wife later on, and I think from health issues. But this, Getty said it was a broken heart that she just couldn't get over the loss of their daughter. And then the whole thing with Getty, just that amazing motorcycle journey that he took going up to the Alaska and then all the way down to Mexico and back and whatnot. And then he finally gets back to a place where he feels where he can play music again. And I like the fact that the other band members said they just totally had no interest in playing and they thought the band was over. So it's great to see the band get back together. And then in 2013, I think it was Neil was diagnosed with brain cancer.
Glioblastoma. Yeah,
Yeah, which
glioblastoma.
oddly parallels what happened to Gord Downie with the tragically hip. He also
Hmm.
had a brain tumor and died from that. So, like the group was at that point, they've been together like 40 years, and that's a long career for a rock band. And they pretty well thought that was it. And again, they had to go through this whole Alex and Getty had to go through this whole recovery process, and it was hard for them because when Neil was diagnosed with his brain cancer, they gave him like 18 months to live, and he didn't want anybody to know about it. Alex and Getty had to keep mum about it. And it was tough for them because people kept on asking, well, was there ever a chance of the band getting back together again? And they had to play around that whole
Hedge.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for them, being the kind of guys that they are, that was very difficult because they don't like to be dishonest, but they had to honor Neil's request. That's the second chapter of the documentary that we need to see, and perhaps we will see something because as Jesse alluded to, the band is touring, like their 50 something tour, and they've picked a surprising person for their new drummer, which is Annika Nilles from Germany, and she's a highly respected drummer in her own right, more of a jazz fusion experimental type of drummer, but she's technically very adept. And from what I've seen and in this day and age, it's amazing that I basically seen like all their concerts have been recorded. And the quality is pretty good too, right? So you can sit back and watch these things. And she's right in there. And I think she's made Alex and Getty feel young again. Like Getty is just having a blast when he's on stage. He's smiling and he's going back and forth across the stage. And you just look at the technology now. Their guitars are wireless, so they don't have any cords holding them back. And they've employed a keyboardist so that Getty can interact more with the crowd in the band and that he plays some of the signature riffs in that. But it's been quite a delight to see them so re-energized and amazingly, Getty's voice has recovered pretty well. He's obviously he doesn't have a 20-year-old voice anymore, but a lot of people are saying that he's singing better now than when their last tour 13 years ago. And I think I'm surprised that you guys said that the Rush is more well known than I might have thought in the States. But I think that they're actually, and that's obviously true, but I think they might be more popular now than ever. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but as I'm wont to do, I'll get on YouTube and I'll start going down rabbit holes. And a lot of times it's first time listening to Rush. And I go, okay, I got to check this
Yep.
out. And it's a kid, like 20 years old, and they're going like, wow, who are these guys? And
Yeah.
I think it's in this day and age with music as being like in the spirit of radio, where they talk about it being mass produced and calculated and artificial and overdubbed and whatnot, that these guys, they're pretty basic at the core. They're playing their own instruments. The songs sound the same, all well the same live as they do on the records. They tried their hardest to make the what they did reproducible in stadiums, and which is quite a chore feat to for them to pull off, considering how the technology was over the course of their career. Now, like the difference between even now, like when they toured in the 2010s and to what they're doing now, like what they can do walking around the stage with no wires and there's no speakers behind them and it's all over the venue's sound system is just amazing. And they're a throwback band in today's era. So it's been a pleasant surprise for sure. A lot of people were worrying that whether or not Annika could do justice to Neil Peart's drumming. I think she actually's doing that and maybe surpassing it in some ways. I think she's more technically accomplished than Neil was in terms of she's more versatile. Neil was very good at a certain style of drumming, like he's very good at timing, hitting the beats and that, and she can do that too, but she's also able to improvise more because of her jazz background and that. So it's been interesting. My biggest concern was actually Geddy's voice at 72, and like some people don't like his voice when he was 20, Jesse said. So it's been a very pleasant gift that they've been able to come back and tour like this and be so well received. And I just thought it was a good time to do an episode like this, and I appreciate you two taking the time to check them out, even if it's not the kind of music that you might normally listen to.
Can I add some stuff here?
Sure.
That's where I know Geddy Lee from, is from
From
that album, The Great White
Oh,
North.
okay.
I've mentioned before, I'm a fan of sketch comedy, and Second City was one of the things I watched, SCTV. And so I went out and bought that album right away. I pretty much have the stuff memorized,
Mhm.
even still today. On the first day of Christmas, my true love gave to me a
Dear,
beer.
dear.
So funny. And the
Yeah.
1981, by the way, I remember because I was, okay, in the eighth grade. But anyway, that was a big deal for me. And them saying, Geddy Lee, everyone, when he was singing on the Great White North. Like they actually say that. Geddy Lee, they're presenting him in the middle. And one of the things that I did growing up was my parents were antique dealers. So, along with other stuff. So, we would go to like fairgrounds when they had big flea market type things. We went to the Rose Bowl, which is a very famous flea market in California. They have a flea market like every 2 weeks. I don't know whether they're still doing it that often or not, but they had a guy selling cutout records, and I bought the 80s Rush album in a cutout. I also bought Pyromania at that point. That's the kind of music I was into, and
Mm.
an REO Speedwagon, a Foreigner 4 as well. So this is right up my alley. So yeah, they were a big part of my fun music listening to in high school. And you mentioned people filming reactions to it. I subscribe to a channel called The Charismatic Voice. I don't know if you guys
Yep.
know
Yep.
her. Okay.
Yep.
And she reviewed several Rush songs over the years. I watched a couple of those the other day because I knew that you'd done them. I am a music nerd. So hearing her break down some of the stuff was really cool. It makes me feel smart too, because I already had in my head this was going on. And to hear her mention it, I was like, yes, I know that too. But they do a lot of really technical things where they change key very quickly and back to the other key.
Yeah, signature changes. Yeah.
Yeah, all over the place, the time sig they go from 4/4 to 2/4 to and then back to 4/4, and it's seamless. So it's something that it doesn't look like they've put any effort into it when another band wouldn't be able to do it. And Neil was so proficient, and his drumming, I love drummers. So, we get the those really fast riffs of his. There was a lot of technical things that I loved. And when I listened to them in high school, I had that same feeling, but I didn't know all that. I wasn't well versed in that kind of musicality thing, but I
Hmm.
still recognized that they were doing something exemplary. And as I grew up and learned more about music, I was singing in groups and things. I learned more about piano playing. The fact that Geddy could play piano keyboards with his feet, that
Yeah.
was mind blowing. They didn't sound like a three-person band. And I think that was due down to their musicality. And they impress me all the time. And it's like whenever I hear one of their songs, I've heard it 100 times, but I find something new. You find a new drum riff or a new guitar riff or something like that, and you go, oh, I didn't realize they did that. And it's that kind of thing that endears me to a band. That happens with Queen too, in my case. You hear something new that goes on in the background. And I was always impressed with Freddie's voice, but I didn't
Sure. Yeah.
realize that the band behind him was also doing great things.
Yeah.
And that's the way I feel about them. I didn't realize until my 20s maybe that Alex Lifeson was such a great guitar player, because you have Neil Peart playing the drums in a way that you can't avoid hearing how great he is.
Right.
And so I could break down stuff and say, dude, this guy's keeping up. Neil's driving the song. He wrote all the lyrics. The musicality of them is superlative. That's a lot of how I feel. I know I'm rambling, but there's something special about them. I'm glad they're touring again. I just looked it up because we were talking about them being in Fort Worth,
Hmm.
and they're playing here later this year. And I'm gonna see if Sean wants to go. We're a little wary of going to concerts and things, but that might
Hmm.
be worth it to go out and see
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. Cool. Cool.
So I was going to just talk about one of the things that struck me is how little drama there is with this band.
Yeah. They're just
You,
regular Judes.
you do not hear that it appears most of them have been married only once, right? Which is unusual in the world, period.
Yep.
Forget rock stars, just
Yeah.
period. The scenes with their family, are you going to do this? And then the surprise.
Yeah.
The other thing that I really enjoyed on this, and once again, take a drink, is in an interview, Max Weinberg from the E Street Band says, I have a very simple drum kit. I don't have a lot. It's smaller than most people. It's what I like. And I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting, right? And then
Hmm.
I see this guy's set. I go,
40
oh,
drums.
that's
Yeah.
what Max is talking about.
Yep.
And this was a great deep dive. I loved getting to know these guys via this documentary and hearing different kinds of music
Hmm.
and so it was fun to stretch my hearing muscles.
Hmm.
And this was great.
Awesome.
I also loved watching how Alex was very hesitant to bring synths and to change their sound at all.
Yep.
But you could see that Neil was excited to do that. He was ready to pull new things. He was, when electric drums came out, he bought a set and added
Yep.
it
Yep.
to his 40-piece drum
Hmm.
kit. And also them saying that he showed up to audition with his drums in a garbage bag or something. I can't remember what, but
Yep. In my
so
old hometown of Ajax, Ontario. Is
awesome.
that's where he auditioned for them. I
That's
didn't know that
cool.
until I watched the documentary though. But
That's
yeah, I was
awesome.
going, wow.
I've always had, I don't know whether I told you this or not, but I love Canada. I visited in high school. I went to Toronto with my parents. We stayed at the Royal York Hotel in
Yep.
Toronto
Yep.
before it was the Fairmont. And this was before the big overhaul. So we got the Rococo elements in our room and all that stuff. We had a suite with 3 bedrooms, and there was a sitting room and no kitchen, because who cares about a kitchen at that point? You're going to eat all the good food they serve you at the Royal York. And I remember so many things from that. So Canada to me, and I hadn't heard much about the Tragically Hip. I'll admit that right now.
Mm.
But SCTV, Rush, all the comedians that have come out of Canada, all the actors. Anytime I hear someone's from Canada, I'm like, yes. Ryan Reynolds, Nathan Fillion.
William
We have
Shatner.
William Shatner, yes. There's no shortage of talent that has come out of Canada. And I'm not sure I've waxed about Canada much on here, but man, if my husband was okay with snow, I would want to move to Canada right now. But
Yeah.
he's not, so
Well,
that's
if you move to South
question.
Ontario, you move to Toronto, you hardly get any snow. But,
Yeah, he doesn't care.
yeah.
He wants no
Um,
snow.
yeah, I'll try not to drag this out too long, but it's hard for me not to say a couple of things. So, first of all, with the documentary, there was one section there where they were talking to Rush fans about how many shows they'd seen. I was totally thinking of you, Jesse, during that section of the episode of the documentary. I've seen him 110 times. I go, yeah,
Yep.
okay, wow. I
It's a
went all the
little
way to
much,
Stockholm.
but yeah, I
Jesse
get it.
hasn't gone to Stockholm to see Bruce yet. They're still waiting for that.
Yeah. You gonna go overseas to watch Bruce at some
It
point?
is on my bucket list. I
Yeah.
want so bad to see, because European fans are better than US fans. I know that sounds snobbish, but the reality is there is something about the next documentary I'm going to have you guys watch is Bruce Springsteen Road Diary. This was about the tour he did in 2024 and 25, not this one he did this year. And
Mm,
there is a scene where one of the backup band members ran into Bruce at a gym during the tour, and he's, oh, respect, the star's up early working out. And Bruce, are you having fun? And he goes, yeah. And the guy says, wait till you get to blank. Bruce says, wait till you get to blank. And it's a European city. Wait till you get to there.
right.
And you think it's good here, but you wait. And
Hmm.
there is something about 20, 30,000 people that don't speak English yelling your lyrics.
Yeah.
So,
Which,
yeah,
yeah, which reminds me of, to me, it was a very impressive Rush story is, and it's one of the videos that I linked for you is
yeah,
the YYZ or
yeah,
YYZ, as we say, video, which was live in Rio. There's there with 60,000 fans. That song is an instrumental, and yet the whole crowd is chanting the beat of the song
yeah,
I
as they're
loved
playing.
that. Loved
yeah,
it.
That was amazing. I love that video. And I also linked the Xanadu video for you just to show how well when they played one of their long songs, just like how amazing they were. And talking about Neil Peart's drum kit, he had a whole percussion thing. He had chimes, wooden blocks,
yeah,
cymbals,
Bells, yeah.
cowbells. He always has cowbells. That's a pretty
Yeah.
rock and roll thing. But it was just amazing to see all the percussion instruments that he had in there and the xylophone keys as well. So that was pretty cool for that to show off his amazing talent. And I guess I'll just wrap it up by saying that, yeah, it's really, I always find it difficult doing these kind of episodes because especially like Karen, you have some familiarity with him. Jesse doesn't have much, but I imagine any listeners that we get on this, if they're mostly in the States, they're going to go, I really don't know who these guys are. And if you don't grow up with the music, I think it's really hard to tell somebody, this is a great group. You should really listen to them. And it has to be, usually it's a much more what you would consider traditional band that would make a bigger impact on somebody. You know, the kind of bands that you would listen to and dance to at a party or listen in the car while you're driving or doing chores or whatever. But this type of music is not really that type of music. It's not social music. It's much more personal music. And I appreciate you both taking the time to do this. And
before you go, Lou, I think that was interesting when they talked about they were playing high school dances. And they're like, we don't really, we're just not a really good band to play
Not our vibe.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
a high school band, but
yeah,
that's cool.
yeah. Alrighty. So, in a nutshell, that's Rush. If there's one thing video you should check out, I didn't link it for you guys. I think it's called Rush Goes to Dinner or something like that. And I think you see a little bit of that at the end of the documentary when they're doing the credits, when they're talking about Frankenstein and he's putting up the peppers to his neck to look like bolts and stuff like that. There's a hour long clip where they're just talking nonsense, and it's pretty funny. And Alex is, of course, just hilarious in that
I
whole
love
segment.
him.
Yeah. So that wraps up this one off. And with that, I'll ask Jesse and Karen to tell us where they can find them. And Karen, how about you first?
Sure. You can email us at jklmediareviews@gmail.com. I'm at Aliveria on social media, and my blog is alistuff.com.
Awesome. Jesse.
So I am at Jesse Jackson DFW on most social media. You can hear me talking John Hyatt, talk about a little known artist, Americana artist, on Perfectly Good podcast, where we're going through every John Hyatt song in alphabetical order. We are up to the O's. I am on Small Council Matters, which Perfectly Good pod with the tuning into sci-fi TV, talking House of Dragons. We are having a lot of fun talking about that. And Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast, where Charles and I are talking the Dalek Master Plan, which is a first Doctor story that was lost. And some of the episodes were found. So we are covering the found episodes and the rest. And that's been a lot of fun.
Awesome. And just one more Rush thing that I forgot to mention is one of the things I love about Rush is if you listen to one of their songs, they're so well recorded that you can just focus on one of the instruments and listen to that through the whole song and hear it clearly. And you can also hear them all clearly when you listen to them together, which makes for multiple re-listens as you want to pick up different things, as Karen was mentioning before. Anyhow, with that out of the way, you can find me, of course, at this YouTube channel, JKL Media Reviews, where we do all our ongoing stuff. We're currently going through The Expanse, waiting for Pluribus and Severance to return. We do one-offs like this, and Bruce, and comic books, and music, and whatever books, whatever catches our fancy. On my home channel on YouTube, Lou's Reviews, you can find our archived episodes of the Babylon 5 series, as well as the animated movie. And the reason it's over there is I just didn't feel like migrating it all over to this channel because that's a lot of stuff. So it's there still if you want to listen to it, as well as my writers and podcast and interviews and the Stephen King podcast. And on Twitter and Blue Sky, you could find me at Lou W. Sytsma, Sytsma. And with that, the balcony is closed. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
And scene.
The proceeding has been a JKL Media production.